Paula has sent a letter that she wanted me to read for you today. When we scheduled our fall family vacation this year, I didn't think about the election happening the week before, let alone what might happen and who we might elect. And you are here, and I am away this Sunday. Please know that I miss you terribly. I miss your energy and your love. I miss being together in what we have created at Spiritual Soul Center, especially after an election that has left many here red-eyed, enraged, confounded, defeated, and deeply sad. All of this is okay so long as it is balanced with kindness, because that's who we are here and what we are inspired to create here, no matter what. This will not change. Today you will hear from Deb Bowen. She is authentic and is inspired to connect you with exactly where you are. Please listen to her words and her wisdom. I'll be back next Sunday, and together we will find our way, do our work, and hold hands and hearts on this part of the journey. And we'll be together. I love you all. Paula.
I can't say I feel this way this morning, but maybe I'm supposed to be reminded I do, right? I'm supposed to. It's by Hunter Thompson. Life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty and well-preserved body, but rather to skid in broadside in a cloud of smoke, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, "Wow, what a ride."
I found myself this week particularly moved by a quote by Thich Nhat Hanh, which is, "The next Buddha will not take the form of a person. The next Buddha will rather take the shape of a community that practices understanding and loving kindness, a community that practices a way of conscious living. This may be the most important thing for Earth's survival." And this morning, as I meditated outside on my back porch, I began to weep with gratitude, because I realized that that is exactly what we have here. And that whether it is through our individual work or when we collectively come together, that we are all tapping into that Buddha nature, that Christ or Krishna consciousness, with loving kindness and compassion to raise the frequency of the entire planet and to make this a better existence for all. And so for that and for you, I am eternally grateful.
Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand now. Stand by me. Stand by me.
It's my pleasure at this time to introduce our guest speaker today, who is Deb Bowen. Deb is a former grief counselor and retired faculty member from UNCW School of Social Work. She is also the author of A Good Friend for Bad Times, Helping Each Other Through Grief. So please help me welcome Deb Bowen.
I don't do all this technology well, y'all, so here we go. Thank you. How lovely to be with you all. After that note from Paula and Nate singing, I don't know that I got much to say, really. We'll see what happens. Remember that verse in the Bible where God says to Noah, no, wrong person, Moses, God says to Moses, take off your shoes because the ground upon which you stand is holy ground. I think all ground is holy ground, and certainly it is here today. So yeah, I'm barefooted. So there we go. When Paula called me and asked me to be here today with you all while she was away with family, that was weeks ago. Weeks ago she called me. And I said, okay, great. And I wrote it in my calendar. And I started to think about what I would be talking about with you all today. And a couple of topics emerged, kind of random thoughts that I thought would morph into something. And one of them was to bear witness, and the other was to be of use. And I'll explain to you how those titles actually ended up being what I'm going to talk about today. But I have to tell you that I thought I'd have a lot of time to prepare for what I needed to say. And then about a week ago, maybe a little more than that, it occurred to me that I would be here with you this morning on the Sunday after the election. And I froze. I couldn't find any words to write because I wasn't sure what I was going to write about given perhaps which way the election was going. And then Tuesday came, and Tuesday night. And I spent Tuesday evening texting and phone calling with lots of friends, watching the election results come in. And then I went to bed before, of course, the election was called. I got up Wednesday morning, I made coffee, I braced myself for the news, whatever it was going to be, and I just finished listening to the news when Paula called. And I cannot tell you how grateful I was to talk to her. I cried. I was so glad to hear her voice. I told her I was worried about what I was going to say with you all this morning, about how much responsibility I felt to offer you whatever I could to help you through this time, regardless of our political perspectives. In the past, I've been pretty clear about what messages I wanted to share with you, thoughts about grief, about the notion of connectedness and oneness. We even have talked about quantum physics and systems theory and how everything in the cosmos is related. And I need to tell you that I struggled with what to talk about this morning, what to write to you in an attempt to connect in some way, in a deeper way that we needed to do this morning. And I have to tell you that Nate's music was so helpful this morning. And so was music through this past week. I don't know what I would have done without music this past week, and I'm going to talk about that. I needed something that would help me express emotions I couldn't express. Find something that could, in some moments, be comforting, to strengthen me, to give me courage, to help me deal with fear. And I'll share with you some of those words from other people in a minute. But as I thought about this morning, I realized that we would have to talk about grief again, but in a different way than the way in which I spoke to you about grief a year and a half ago. A year and a half ago, we focused mostly about deeply personal, individual grief. This morning, we're talking about grief on a much larger scale. We're talking about a communal grief among us. And grief is deeply connected to fear and a whole variety of other emotions. I think we fear even thinking about losing what we have known, what is familiar, what sustains us. Not just as individuals, but as a family, as community, a nation, a world. I think we grieve what we don't know the potential for loss. I think we grieve losses because we have seen losses on a large scale in the past, and we're afraid it's going to come again. So let me tell you a story. A few months ago, I wrote a story entitled "Let No One Turn You Around," and it was published in a journal called Salvation South. It's about my growing up in the South in the 1960s and 70s and beyond. Those were the years of the Vietnam War, those tumultuous years of folks fighting for civil rights, black people, gay people, First Nations people, and women. And in the story, I write about a Sunday in March 1965, when I was 14 and too young to do much about civil rights work. And I write about John Lewis leading a group of people marching across the Edmund Pettus Bridge as they marched between Selma and Montgomery, Alabama for civil rights. And those demonstrators were forced to disperse, were told to disperse. And less than 2 minutes after they were told to disperse, sheriff's deputies, state troopers just descended on them and beat them with bullwhips and tear gas. And that day became known internationally, of course, as Bloody Sunday. And as I watched that day unfold on television, I and so much of the world realized that what we were feeling was grief. I grieved thinking that one group of people could so terrorize another, to be so brutal, to covet power and control so much. By the time I got to college, I wasn't too young to work for civil rights anymore. We railed against the killing of young people by the National Guard at Kent State University in 1971. I have friends who were at the siege of Wounded Knee in 1973. We held the first Earth Day rally. We worked to save sea life. And yes, we burned bras. And I burn another one today, but that's all. This work never ends. There are still people working and writing for freedom and dignity of all people. And many of those people are in this room this morning. When I became frozen this week and was unable to articulate emotions from so many traumatic events and situations, I realized I rely on lyricists and writers to speak for me. And the title of the work that I mentioned, Ain't Gonna Let Nobody Turn Me Around, comes from an old spiritual hymn, which Nate needs to learn, okay? Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Keep on a marching, keep on a walking up to freedom land. The antidote for fear, for being frozen, for being numb, is to act, to be courageous in both large and small ways. Do one thing every day that scares you, said Eleanor Roosevelt. Let no one turn you around. Another of the writers that I rely heavily on when I'm in this kind of place is a woman whose name is Holly Near. Holly's an amazing activist. In the late 60s, she went to Vietnam with Jane Fonda and Tom Hayden and Joan Baez. She's still writing and singing and working for freedom. And this is a song that she wrote, and I'm just going to read you one piece of it, for people who had died around the world fighting for rights of others. The song is entitled, It Could Have Been Me. It could have been me, but instead it was you. So I'll keep doing the work you were doing as if I were too. I'll be a student of life, a singer of songs, a farmer of food, and the righter of wrongs. It could have been me, but instead it was you. And it may be me, dear sisters and brothers, before we are through. But if you can live for freedom, 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 freedom. If you can live for freedom, I can too. And then I realized that regardless, I'm still morphing my way through trying to figure out what to say to you all as I'm writing this. And I realized I needed to share these two ideas that I circled back to, that I really started with. One is to explore what it means to bear witness, and the other is what does it mean to be of use. I would imagine that most of us in this room this morning are firm believers in the separation of church and state. A firm believer of kind of leaving political discussions out of some things. And yet, how is it possible to do that in a world where feeding, clothing, housing, and nurturing each other is political? I know how dedicated this congregation is to service, and I applaud and appreciate you for that. And I want to explore that a bit more. For 21 years, I taught folks how to be social workers. And every semester, at least one student would come to my office, paper and pen in hand, and the student would say, now when the client says X, I say, and they're poised for me to answer the question. And I say, I have no idea. I don't have a clue. I don't have a clue what you should say. And the students usually didn't like my answer because they wanted a formula, a recipe, something that was safe and concrete. And there isn't one generally, because sometimes we don't need or want a response. Sometimes we just need each other to listen, to stand as a witness to the burdens we carry. Sometimes we don't need someone to proselytize or tell us what we should or could do. Just listen. That's bearing witness. And thank goodness for the people who listened to me this week. And thank goodness for me being able to listen to some of the other people this week. So as we move through this time of uncertainty, through this new normal that is coming, sometimes we must just sit with, truly be with another person, and just listen. We don't always understand. We may never truly be able to understand what someone else feels. Sometimes saying, I'm sorry, is a platitude, and it isn't wanted or needed. Just be. It takes strength and courage to just be, to acknowledge someone else's emotion without judgment or comment. This is another one of my favorite groups. Tell you, music got me through this week. Sisters Leah and Chloe Smith of Rising Appalachia sing about being truly present, not only with another person, but as we navigate the changing waters around us. In their wonderful song, Resilience, here's what they sing. I am resilient. I trust the movement. I negate the chaos. I uphold and uplift the negative. I'll show up at the table again and again and again. I'll close my mouth and learn to listen. So what I'm suggesting is that all of us, me included, learn to truly be present with someone who needs to talk, to just bear witness. And I think that's really important in this time as we navigate new waters. The second thing that I need to share with you is the notion of being of use. To do what we can, when we can, where we can. There is so much power in that. You all in this congregation do that all the time. I know you do. I've seen the service work you do. I see it in the gatherings you do for each other and for folks who are not members of this congregation. I just think now's a time where we're all going to be called to do more. You may not remember this, but one of the previous times I was with you all on a Sunday morning, I discussed the concept of matakiasi, the Lakota notion that everything is connected, and that there is no hierarchy among all beings on this planet. We all are a part of the great gift-giving circle, crawling, swimming, flying, four-legged, two-legged, standing, stone people. Remember that? Yeah. Yeah, okay, here we go. And remember me asking you if you believed in the notion of that deep connection among us? And y'all nodded and smiled and said, yes, of course. And I said, everybody? And y'all nodded and smiled some more and said, yes, of course. And my response to you that morning was, yeah, right, think about that. Remember me saying that to you? Well, we're circling back around to that because my response, I could tell then, puzzled you when I said, think about it. Do you really mean it? And I think that my response to you then, as it is today, is a reminder that culturally, nationally, we have begun to think so deeply, it's become so acculturated in us to think us and them. And we all know there is us and them. And yet, one of the ways that I think we have to do and be in the world different to be of use is to think in terms of us. There is just us. And that's hard. But I think it's a real task that we're being called to think about. This past Thursday, I was here in Wilmington, and I drove past Longleaf Park, which I'm so glad is called Longleaf Park today. I was driving past Longleaf Park, and it was drizzling rain, and it was foggy. And those amazing longleaf pine trees, y'all, I could really talk for a long time on how grateful I am about those trees, but that's a whole other thing. But those trees were standing tall, sentinels against that beautiful fog. It was just gorgeous. And the power of those trees, not just standing tall, but how their roots are intertwined, was so beautiful to me. And the power of that image hit me. That I can be in the fog. I don't need to know everything. I don't always need to know the future. What I do need to know for certain is that even in the fog of unknowing, of times when I'm so unsure, there is beauty, there is comfort and history if we all stand together. So let me share with you something that Barbara Kingsolver wrote this past week. If you know Barbara's work, some of you may know her work from Demon Copperhead. I think I got her name right, Demon Copperhead. My favorite of her books is called Animal Vegetable Miracle. But she wrote this on Wednesday. Truth and love have been smacked down so many more times in history than before today. Truth, because it's often inconvenient, and love, because it is vulnerable. But truth is like gravity, and carbon, and the sun behind an eclipse. It's still there. And love stays alive if you tend it like a flame. If you feel crushed by unkindness today, it's a time for grieving, reaching out to loved ones, noticing one bright color somewhere, remembering what there is to love, starting with the immediate, the place and people who can tend ourselves and make us feel safe. We can't save everything all at once, but it's still worth saving something because there is so many of us to do it. And we are all still here today, exactly as we were yesterday, like gravity and carbon and the sun behind an eclipse. So let me leave you with one more set of lyrics from one of my favorite songs. It's by Jewel. And I have to tell you that today, I'm not even sure I really believe the lyrics I'm about to share with you. But I want to. I want to believe that these lyrics can come true. And I believe we can make them come true if we hold on tightly to each other in love and kindness. If we are to be of use to each other and bear witness to each other's stories, we can make it. The name of the song is Hands. If I could tell the world just one thing, it would be that we're all okay and not to worry because worry is wasteful and useless in times like these. I won't be made useless. I won't be idle with despair. I will gather myself around my faith, for light does the darkness most fear. My hands are small, I know, but they're not yours. They are my own. I am never broken. I will get down on my knees and I will pray. I will get down on my knees and I will pray. I will get down on my knees and I will pray. For we are never broken. We are God's eyes, God's hands, God's heart. So let's just take a moment here to spend some time in meditation, in time in just contemplating what we've thought about this morning. I just invite you to, as you're meditating, think about what you can do to go forward in the light.
Started out down a dirty road. Started out all alone. As the sun went down, as I crossed the hills, the town lit up. Still, I'm learning to fly, but I ain't got wings. Coming down is the hardest thing.
May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be happy. May all beings be filled with loving kindness. May all be well. May all be peaceful and at ease. May all be